Hello, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Welcome to the final episode of SpinCheck before the election, right here on 6 News. We are just 25 hours away from polls closing in a lot of the eastern states. Can you believe it? But a lot of the focus is, as you can imagine, on, right now, marginal seats. And one of these marginal seats is Bass. That is the Liberals' most marginal seat, and it's in Tasmania. We went down to Tasmania to see what's happening on the ground and whether Bridget Archer, the current member, can hold the seat. And we also spoke to Green Senator for Tasmania, Nick McKim.
Both in the House and in the Senate, I think Tasmania is going to play a critical role here. In the House, you've got Bass, Braddon and Lyons that are, relatively marginal. Certainly Bass and Braddon, both held by the Liberals, are extremely marginal. And I've learned over a fair while in politics not to try and pick Bass. It's a very close seat demographically, and Greens' preferences could be crucial. In fact, all three of those seats, Bass, Braddon and Lyons, and I think it'll be worth keeping an eye on all three of those seats come election night. And in the Senate, I think the fifth and sixth seats are very much up for grabs down here. We want and need every vote we can get to hold our seat down here, and we've got a great candidate in Pete Wish-Wilson, and we're running a really strong campaign, and the sixth seat as well is a very interesting one and could change the power dynamic in the Senate quite significantly. So I think Tasmania's well worth watching on election night. We're really hopeful that we'll have more senators, that we'll have more members in the House of Representatives, and we won't be shy about exercising any power that the Australian voters give us. Like, we're in politics in order to generate outcomes. We're in politics because we believe in our policies and we're bound together by our values, and we will do everything we can. We'd like to get rid of this government. We'd like to see a change in government, and we think putting the Greens in balance of power in both the House of Representatives and the Senate would be the best outcome, because we can push a new Labor government to go further and faster on issues like climate change and on addressing economic inequality.
There are only 5 electorates in Tasmania: Bass, Braddon, Clark, Franklin and Lyons. Bass is the main one many are looking at, currently held by Liberal MP Bridget Archer.
Tasmanian Liberal Bridget Archer becoming the latest government MP to cross the floor, joining independents and Labor trying to force a Corruption Commission debate.
This is one of the most important things that we come to this place to do.
But it's not just Tasmania the Greens hope to make gains in. In states like Victoria and Queensland, they're also hoping to pick up more House of Representative seats compared to the one they have currently with leader Adam Bandt in Melbourne.
We've got a bit of a fight on our hands. The margin is quite large at the moment. It's 14.8% on paper, but the seat has been a lot more marginal than what it currently is. And I feel that, we could come pretty close. We have run a really good campaign. I don't want to big up my chances, but the sorts of great feedback that we've got on the ground has been really amazing to see. The sitting Labor member compared to her predecessors in the seat. So I've lived in this seat mainly for the best part of 25 years. The current sitting member's Jed Carney, and she is of the socialist left. She's a unionist, has been for an incredibly long time. And she holds quite progressive positions on a number of things. But when it comes to party room dynamics and all of that, those sorts of voices end up being drowned out by Labor and their lurch to the right on a number of issues, and a number of issues that really matter to people in this seat. So I think a lot of those Liberal preference flows have more to do with the fact that Labor and their stances on things like the environment, refugee rights, even in some circumstances, workers' rights, have a lot more in common than what Liberals' policies do with Greens. So Liberal voters are more likely to see Labor as being closer to them.
Now, say hypothetically you were elected to the crossbench, and I'm talking about this in broad terms, like what the Greens policy as a party is. What would be some key stakes in the grounds that you wouldn't compromise on in the event of a hung parliament and say Labor chose to do a deal with you?
Look, I think that that's up to the people at the time, but we are a grassroots democracy. We have polled our members on what will and won't be up for grabs. I'm not privy to those results at this stage, but I know that we aren't prepared to budge on coal and gas. We cannot have new coal and gas projects if we want to get anywhere near 1.5 to 2% warming for climate crisis. It's just, not possible.
Okay, and so what's the point of the other policies then if you won't commit to implementing them in a hung parliament, if you only commit to coal and gas?
I think you're twisting my words there, Connor. I didn't say that's the only thing that we are looking for. And I know that for us, the religious discrimination bill definitely won't get up. We will not allow that to happen. And if you look at some of our other policies, we really want the cashless card gone, the debit card. So I think Labor also committing to that so that we could work well together.
There are many issues that voters who aren't interested in the major parties and the minor parties themselves are focusing on. The Liberal Democrats are looking at issues like freedom. The United Australia Party has spoken about China being a threat to Australia. Another issue globally for some voters is Palestine. We spoke to Fahad Ali, who is a Greens member, about the issue and where the major parties stand on the subject.
So the current government has what I think is quite a poor policy regarding Palestine. So first of all, the current government does not recognise Palestinian statehood, and they have no plans to do so. While they have called for a halt to settlement activity, at no point have they identified settlement as being illegal, and have in fact, I think the foreign minister said, show me where in international law these settlements are illegal. There have been no calls for withdrawal from Gaza, and in response to the Amnesty report that came out recently, the Prime Minister Scott Morrison said in response, no country is perfect and we will remain a friend of Israel. And in fact, the foreign minister does not agree with the characterization of Israel as an apartheid state. Labor has quite a good position, but there's quite a substantial room for improvement. So Labor has taken the position that they will move in a future Labor government to recognize Palestine, and that is with the caveat that that will be in consultation with what they describe as like-minded governments and stakeholders. They are opposed to settlements, and while in 2015 a resolution at the ALP National Conference described those settlements as illegal, the Labor Party has not consistently done so in public statements. They haven't called for a withdrawal of Israel from Gaza or the West Bank, and in fact, in meeting with representatives from Israeli lobby groups, the leader of the opposition, Anthony Albanese, stated that the apartheid label was offensive. And the Shadow Foreign Affairs Minister, Penny Wong, had said that it was an unhelpful characterization that was not found to apply by any international court, which of course raises a question, what happens when an international court does reaffirm the Amnesty finding and the finding of other human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch and the Israeli Human Rights Group.
But now let's head back to Tasmania. Tasmania has been an outlier from the mainland over the past 2 years in many cases, especially when it comes to the pandemic, having much fewer COVID cases than many other states and territories. Tassie also recently got a new Premier, Jeremy Rockliff, after Peter Gutwein resigned.
The Tasmanian COVID context is a really interesting one. As you pointed out before, we've had a state election since the pandemic began, and we didn't return a Labor government. We returned an incumbent Liberal government. But interestingly, in that election, the government's vote went down. So the Liberal government's vote went down. The Labor Party's vote went down. The Greens' vote went up. The only party with representation in the Tasmanian Parliament that actually delivered an increase in our vote, which we're really proud of in the middle of a pandemic. So I think Given that now Tasmania is running, like we've obviously the government's made the decision to open the borders and basically let the virus rip, just as much of the rest of the country has. I'm not sure that Tasmania will play much differently in the context of COVID than any other state or territory.
And that is the final episode of SpinCheck before the election for this Friday evening. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget, 6 News will be live all Saturday night from 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time with live coverage of the federal election. It'll be available on our YouTube channel and our website, 6newsau.com. Also, a special edition of our Sunday night news at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time with coverage from WAMN News as well. For now, though, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Have a great night.